Hello everybody and welcome back to Q&A Wednesdays, and first of all I hope this finds everybody safe and well and that you're all keeping safely tucked at home if you need to, and you're following all the guidelines to ensure that you are staying safe and well. Want to say thank you also to our new supporters, new subscribers and new followers. We couldn't do this without you guys, so just thank you very much for that. And our Patreon guys and girls have sent us some questions, and let's roll straight into them. Our first question is from Chris Hockley. He says, I bought it as a standard panel van. It's still in conversion, but I have put in side and rear windows, so it still looks quite different. Due to the change of rules last year, I've read that the best I will get from the DVLA is van with windows. Therefore, as I am now at this stage, should I re-register or wait until the conversion is finished? Now, that's not a controversial question, but one that people still don't really have a solid answer to at the moment, not just myself. If you remember back in October, we did a full video on the new rules and regulations from the DVLA regarding how to re-register your camper van. And since then, it seems like it's got even more grey. It's not a very clear guideline, and from what I've seen, there are a lot of people who have tried to register their van as per the guidelines, but the responses that people keep coming back is van with windows, van with windows, van with windows. We plan to do a follow-up video in the coming weeks and months regarding the DVLA rules and regulations and what successes or failures people have had. But to answer your question, Chris, I feel that you should wait until the conversion is definitely finished before you go ahead and re-register, because there might be some changes that you do further down the line. It is a van, it is likely to be a van with windows unless you've built a huge coach-built van or it's been professionally converted into a coach-built van with, say, a box body on the back. It is unlikely to be classed as a camper van as of October 2019. So, you know, it's a bit of a shame, but as long as you have got all your details correct with your insurance company, then actually driving the vehicle as it is should be fine. But I would suggest that you wait until the conversion is completely finished until you actually go to re-register the vehicle. I hope that's helped, and thank you for your question. Next is from Dan Walker. Hey guys, I messaged you with a question about adding new anchor points and the best way of fixing them to the floor through the ply. It would be good to get your steer. I remember the question, I remember the email. I believe Dan Walker is, he's wanting to anchor a motorbike in the back of his van. And he's actually got some interior down one side, so that would mean in the back of a T5 or T6, for example, you've actually lost the right hand side 3 anchor points, and he'd like to put some new ones in. I would suggest that you measure and then remeasure exactly where you need your anchor points, then have a good look underneath the van as to where you feel the holes may come through. Before you drill any holes, I would make a safe assumption that one of them is going to be near the front of the van, which is where the fuel tank is for the van. So if you are going to do any drilling, any van, definitely make sure where your hole will be coming through first from underneath. And secondly, if you are going to drill anything through, make sure you are clear of any brake lines, fuel lines, or the fuel tank for sure. And also the spare wheel. I've heard stories of people actually drilling through their floor and going straight through the spare tyre underneath the van. In terms of what you would need underneath, I would suggest a good maybe 3 by 3 inch 5mm steel plate, or a 4 by 4 inch. I know I'm using metric and imperial, but okay, so a 3 by 3 inch 5mm steel plate with a good flange nut underneath, beneath that plate would be good for an anchor point for any sort of load that you are holding within the van. if you do not want to actually bolt, you're going to have to bolt through the ply, and to ensure that you are not squeezing the layers of ply and you are getting a metal on metal contact, so it's going anchor point loop, then the bolt head, then the actual floor. To ensure that it's a metal on metal contact all the way through, I would recommend that you get some steel tubing to the correct internal diameter to make sure your bolt fits through. Then I would cut that steel tube to the exact height, or maybe just above the height of your floor, so you are having a full metal on metal contact all the way through. So it would go anchor point, bolt head, or bolt head, anchor point, then the bolt wouldn't be squeezing the floor, it would be actually squeezing the metal tube, so you're not compressing that floor and you are getting that metal on metal contact all the way through. I hope that makes sense. If you need any more clarity, I will quite happily do you a diagram for it. Matt Bristow. My T5 has been insulated and replied and about to be recarpeted. Two-toned. Dark carpet on the roof, then a lighter shade on the walls. Would you do the walls first and tuck under the roof ply? Carpet roof lining on a bench, then fit? Do the roof carpet first, then walls? And he says, thanks for last week's advice about the roof rack. I have some unibars on their way. So in terms of the order of carpeting, I would carpet the walls first minus the ply panels, unless you have put the ply panels, you want them in there permanently, and you are going to carpet all the wall in one piece as per our video, which you will see up here now. So walls first and then the headlining after. I would cover the headlining on a bench first and then hold it up using the drywall props that we've shown in our headlining video. Again, you can see that here. We've actually covered how to fit the headlining in a van as well. But in terms of order, do your walls first, then your headlining afterwards. And then you'll get a really nice finish in between the contrasting light and dark colours. Next question by Christopher Jamieson. On a T5 with a tailgate, how realistic would it be to install an eye bolt to the rear top corner inside the van to clip one end of a hammock to? Is the structure strong enough to take it? And in brackets, up to 120 kilograms in the hammock total, or would it warp, damage the van? Now, I didn't design the T5, so I can't really make comment on if the structure is strong enough. However, the top of that area where the tailgate would hinge is obviously designed to be strong enough to take the weight and the stress of the tailgate hinges themselves. You would, I would assume, be putting the eye bolt into just one skin of metal. So to that end, if you are serious about putting an eye bolt up there, I would have a chat with your local fabricators or engineering shop to maybe weld a substantial plate up in that top corner. So it would be almost like a spreader plate. You don't want to put just an eye bolt through a single skin of metal. You'd like to maybe weld a plate of say 5mm steel in a nice plate over that area, so you're able to spread that load, especially if it's going to be up to 120 kilograms. So yes, to answer your question, it is realistic, but you may have to seek advice from an engineering firm and maybe even a fabricator to weld a plate up on that top corner. And you can maybe even have an eyelet or a threaded hole so you could wind your eyelet in and out of that plate. Next question then is from Simon Holmes. I'm in the process of bolting in the rails for my rock and roll bed and thinking forward to the flooring and furniture. In the T5 there are 4 channels in the floor for rails, 2 for right hand drive and 2 for left hand drive vans. While feeling the holes in the right-hand drive channels for the rails, I could also drill in the left-hand drive channels and use these to bolt the ply down, either with riv nuts or plates and nuts underneath. When I'm ready, I could also use these to bolt down the frame for my cabinets down one side, which I intend to build myself. Is this a good approach? Also, if, when screwing the ply to the van floor, like in your video, should it be sealed, primed, wax oiled afterwards? Now, I had to study this question a little bit. But what I think I've gathered from this is that you've bought a rock and roll bed on sliders and it's come as a kit, and you've got 2 rails to cater for a right hand drive van and 2 rails to cater for a left hand drive van. You have 2 rails spare because you've, for example, got a right hand drive van, and you'd like to use the left hand drive channels to bolt the ply down and all the cabinets, which I think is a fairly good approach. Personally, you've asked if it's a good approach. I think it is a good approach. If you potentially wanted to remove those interior units for any reason down the line, using the channel system is a fairly good way of doing it. And you could even make a modular system that you could move the interior up and down the rails as long as they're straight, and you can fit, say, a modular interior up and down the van. But do make sure that when it comes to fitting the bed, you're following the guidelines and the instructions that came with it, and the bed is anchored down properly. And when it comes to just using the spare channels, if that's what you're getting at, using riv nuts and or just normal bolts underneath should be okay. However, if you're having any load in a van, much like the anchor point question earlier, I would suggest putting some sort of spreader plate underneath those channels. Regarding screwing the ply to the van floor, I would always suggest putting a sealant on maybe the screw head underneath, but we have built and we have disassembled lots of vans in the past, and the screws going through the floor very, very rarely, if at all, provide any real rust issues, because they're tiny little holes underneath the van, and where they are placed you don't get a lot of dirt and or water underneath that area. So absolutely, if you can seal them, prime them, wax oil them, brilliant, that is the best approach. But I would say personally it's not a huge deal if you don't, because they will survive under there and you won't cause any rust issues because of those screw holes. You've moved the camera now. Let's hope so. Okay, that's fine. You good? Are we running?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry if Dan's just moved the camera around. Our next question then is from Leigh Smirthwaite. He says, "Hi Leigh, I have a 63 plate T5 barn door high top T32 long wheelbase. Do you have any advice on how much weight you can safely put on a fiberglass high top? Does it need to be strengthened? Also, can you cut through the vertical supports in the fiberglass roof to fit an opening window? Thank you for all the videos. You have given us the courage to start our first project. We have fitted windows all round and will soon start insulation. Keep the videos coming, please." So, from what you are telling me, Leigh, it sounds like you have a factory fiberglass roof on your T5. Now, they are the better high tops to have because they do have an internal steel structure. So, first of all, I don't have any advice as to how much weight you can safely put on a fiberglass high top roof. I don't have those stats and statistics. That would have to be something you maybe talk to the dealership regarding. But if you are going to put any sort of structure on a fiberglass roof, I would suggest that you, once again, we've spoken about this twice already, is using spreader plates. If you have the benefit of having a steel structure on the inside of your roof, I would suggest putting any holes in line with those steel structures and then putting a spreader plate behind, so you can distribute that weight evenly rather than just having, say, all the weight anchoring on one small bolt. Second part of the question, also, can you cut through the vertical supports in the fiberglass roof to fit an opening window? If you're planning to put weight on the roof, I would suggest you do not cut through the vertical supports in the fiberglass roof to fit in an opening window. The option might be there is to put maybe a skylight in the roof if you do want ventilation. And thank you for the kind words about the videos. We do plan to keep on making them. This last question is from Chris Kit Parnell, and it is via Facebook, actually, not Patreon this time. If you ask a question to us via Patreon, it will get answered, and we're going to put out the suggestion that you ask a question via Facebook and Instagram, and if you're lucky, we will pick that question if we feel it's the one most relevant. So, Chris Kit Parnell, he says, "Hey Leigh, just was wondering if 9mm ply is the minimum you'd use on the floor of the van. In my caddy, I found that with the Silent Coat and Dodo Mat Superliner, the ply sits very proud of the OEM steps. Any suggestions? Please note I've not decided on floor covering as yet. Not sure what's best for my needs. Thanks, Chris. So again, another two-part question. In a T5 or T4, what are available is a deep side step, because when you convert a van, obviously if you're laying some insulation and say a 12mm floor or 9mm floor, there are a lot of companies out there now that are catering for a deeper step. In vans that do not have deep steps available, there is a couple of approaches you can do, or there is a couple of approaches that I've seen that you can overcome this problem. The first is to put a layer of wood underneath that plastic step to raise the step up and over the lip of the floor, for example. So you're going to pack out the bottom of the step so the seal of the step sits over your floor covering. The second way I've seen it done is to lay the floor actually over that plastic step and then finish off round the edge of the floor with, say, an aluminium trim or a fiberglass trim, for example. So two suggestions there if you cannot find a deep step for your van. Chris goes on to say, I've not decided on floor covering yet, as not sure what's best for my needs. A really good floor possibility you could use is Altro Contracts or Altro Walkway flooring. We've found it's really, really good for using in vans, and we've shown a video on how to lay Altro Contracts flooring, and you'll see that just here. So that's all the questions today. We have had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 5 via Patreon. Thank you very much to all our Patreon supporters once again. You are keeping the channel alive. So really, really good of you. And we had one final question from social media there as well. So next week we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put it out there so you can ask questions to us, and we will gladly answer them for you. So everybody, stay safe, be well. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.